So welcome to everyone for what is going to be our penultimate news from the lab with our knowledge transfer colleagues. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Rachel Bray and I'm Head of Alumni Relations, and I'm here with my colleague Simona, who's done an excellent job in organising this event for you. Now, we're delighted to be joined today by today's moderator, Enna Junish. I hope I've pronounced that okay. So Enna earned her bachelor's and master's degree in physics, specializing in high energy physics, and her academic pursuits brought her to CERN, where she was a summer student. Now she's a distinguished member of the CERN Alumni Network, and she's transitioned into the technical sector. So Enna is currently a data scientist and a machine learning engineer, and she's seamlessly merging business, science, and technology within the startup realm. She's passionate about contributing, as you can see today, and she's always eager to support innovative events and actively engage with the broader tech and scientific community. So Enna, I hand over to you.
Oh, nice. Hi, everyone. Rachel, thank you for this nice introduction. So I will introduce now our Benjamin. Benjamin is a deep tech enthusiast with over 15 years of experience contributing to cutting-edge technological developments. He joined CERN's KT group in 2018, where he coordinates the transfer of CERN technologies towards applications in quantum technologies and healthcare by fostering collaborations with industrial, academic, and clinical partners. He's guided many businesses, from startups to major global enterprises, ensuring their products meet quality and regulations. He's holding a PhD from the Technical University of Vienna for his work on positron emission tomography at CERN. And after that, Benjamin further conducted research on medical robotics and interventional imaging and consulted for medical device manufacturers. So Benjamin will talk about knowledge transfer group, that's actually Katie here, and quantum technology initiative, so QTI. So firstly, I'll briefly introduce you to both. First, knowledge transfer group is a CERN's team that manages the dissemination of CERN know-how and technologies to societal applications, focusing on quantum, healthcare, environment, and digital applications. They foster links with industrial, academic, and institutional partners to establish co-development, consulting, and licensing agreements. Second topic is QTI, or Quantum Technology Initiative, and it is actually CERN's flagship program for R&D and cooperation in quantum technologies. The QTI phase 1 has been running for almost 3 years, and Benjamin will actually here talk about time during the transition from QTI phase 1 to QTI phase 2. After we hear these news from the lab, we will also have a Q&A session. So I will kindly ask you to ask questions in the end. And I'm sure you're curious and you can't wait for Benjamin to start his talk. So Benjamin, please go ahead.
Thank you, Anna, for the introduction. Also, Rachel, thanks for having me again. We had a similar session on healthcare a couple of months ago. So the advantages with all that Anna already said, it's basically the 1 minute version of my whole talk. So what you're going to hear in the next 40 minutes is, well, that we'll just present it in more details. On a side note, we will be present with a booth at the European Quantum Technology Conference in Hanover, mid-October, which means that anybody of you attending that conference or actually being in Hanover for any other reason in that week, we'll be more than happy to meet, have a chat, talk a bit more about quantum technologies. And there's also a very clear disclaimer that I want to make. The work that's presented here, the technologies I'm presented here, are the work of scientists and engineers across CERN. they need to be recognized. That is entirely clear. And it also means that I'm certainly not the expert in the technologies, which means that if you have any questions about the exact nature of the research that we do or any results, I'll be happy to hear them. I can already tell you now the chance that I can answer is very, very low. Now, with that little disclaimer being said, I was planning to give a quick introduction into what CERN and knowledge transfer is. Some of you might have listened in to some of the previous presentations. So what you're going to hear now is not exactly going to be news, but since I do not know whether everybody has an idea of what we actually do, I mean, most of you have been at CERN in my understanding, I thought quick introduction. What you see here is a bird's eye view of Pays de Gex, Lake Geneva. There's beautiful Mont Blanc in the background. We see it today from the CERN side, for those of you who are not in the region, just to make you a bit jealous. What you see in the forefront, the big yellow circle, that's the Large Hadron Collider, our CERN's biggest research instrument as of today. And CERN's fundamental, and CERN's fundamental mission, I mean, CERN, European Organization for Nuclear Research, we are the world's biggest laboratory for particle physics. And the goal, our main goal, is to do fundamental particle physics, that is, understand fundamental particles and laws of the universe. Many of you probably have already seen the pictures that I'm showing here. You've got a look into the LHC tunnel on the left. You'll see a slice of the CMS experiment and the view into the data center on the right. And what that actually tells you is that our mission really is to build the largest machines that are required to study the smallest particles in the universe, the accelerators, the detectors, the computing infrastructure, develop the technologies that are needed to actually do that state-of-the-art particle physics, and therefore allow the worldwide high-energy physics, particle physics communities to do world-class research in theoretical and experimental particle physics. What really matters to CERN are the four pillars that you see on that image. There's obviously the science. I mean, there's the science as in the science in particle physics, but there's also the science behind the technologies, the engineering sciences that you need to do particle physics. And that's why the development of technologies is so important. By the way, exactly those technologies that we'll talk about more, knowing that our team is knowledge transfer, formerly technology transfer. Now, the other two pillars that are quite important are training and collaboration. Training means that we receive young researchers at CERN, spending at CERN sometimes just a few weeks, sometimes their master thesis, their PhD thesis, coming to CERN as a young researcher, coming to CERN as a staff engineer, receiving training, and then actually leaving CERN, going back going in some cases back to academia in other places, going into industry and taking the knowledge that they get at CERN. So that's the first knowledge transfer mechanism we have at CERN, is people getting training, learning about technology and know-how. And finally, collaboration. So collaboration is, of course, a scientific collaboration, but it's also the collaboration with industry. And that is what we want to focus on during the talks by the knowledge transfer group. Now, if we look again at these images, not with the eyes of the CERN person, not with the eyes of the CERNois, not with the eyes of the particle physicist, not even with the eyes of the accelerator physicist, but if you look at this with the eyes of an innovation manager in industry, what you see here is many technologies that make you realize that what CERN actually is a treasure trove of know-how and technologies. Look at the accelerator tube. What you have here is know-how and technologies in vacuum, in ultra high vacuum, actually, in cryogenics, in magnetics, superconductors, industrial systems. I mean, this is a 27-kilometer long machine with hundreds of thousands of sensors to actually pilot what the LHC is doing. You also see a lot of know-how in civil engineering, and the thing lies in a tunnel a few dozen meters under Earth. If you look at the detector, the slice of CMS, what you see is obviously know-how in particle detection, in electronics, in radiation safety, again, industrial know-how, detector readout, that is front-end electronics. In the sense, there's also know-how about edge computing. And then talking about computing, if you look at the computing center, there's the entire know-how that we have at CERN about data selection, data storage, long-term data storage, data analysis, including machine learning. And that treasure trove of know-how gets you to this very broad array of engineering disciplines, and I'm pretty sure that this is not even complete. Broad array of engineering disciplines that are represented at CERN, and that in many cases are developing know-how and technologies that can find societal applications. That brings me a bit more to the area of knowledge transfer and that idea that our innovations can have applications in many fields. Few of you might already know what I will say next, what I'm hinting at, because I'm hinting at CERN's most famous example of knowledge transfer. I'm not going to go through all of the examples we have, but I need to get back to the idea of where the web was born, or actually why Tim Berners-Lee had the idea of what in the end developed into the web. I mean, that dates back to the 1980s, and isn't 1980s, it sounds like it was centuries ago, it was just a few decades ago, but basically dates back to the end of the 80s when there was a very practical problem to be solved. And if you read Tim Berners-Lee's first paper, the one that had a vague but exciting written on it by his supervisor, it actually starts with an explanation about the complexity of finding information that is stored on the computer in a network, because you had to know where precisely, on which computer actually the information was stored. So obviously networks existed, but you couldn't find information. Another concept that existed, but only on local machines, was the concept of hypertext, which allowed you in a text to click on a word and it would take you to another place in the text. And then one of Tim Berners-Lee's ideas back then was like to combine this idea of the hypertext with the idea of a network in order to be able to link to information which is stored in a different place on the network. A very practical issue, a very practical approach to solving it, originally driven by the need of the organization to solve a specific problem. I don't think anybody at that point thought that the entire invention of that combination of hypertext with networks and everything else that was then developed at CERN would at some point become one of the pillars of the web and the internet that as we know it today. Now, many other projects happened. There was always a lot of serendipity involved. However, the goal of having a dedicated knowledge transfer group is to precisely maximize the knowledge, know-how, and technological return to society through practical applications. And that means collaborating with both academia and industry in the member states and in the associate member states. I mean, that's really the priority that we're giving. And there's, of course, this wish to transfer technology, but there's also a deeper mission behind that, and that's promoting CERN, not only CERN actually, promoting high energy physics as centers of excellence for technology and innovation by demonstrating to our funding agencies the importance and the impact of investments into fundamental research, because yes, fundamental research might not have an immediate application. However, the technologies that you need to develop, well, they might have applications. And we've successfully had knowledge transfer, tech transfer projects in many areas. The most well-known is the area of healthcare. Think about particle therapy, so cancer therapy using accelerated particles, but also areas of environment, aerospace, digital application, and obviously quantum. Now, if you wonder how to collaborate with CERN, and the hope, of course, is that that presentation would give some of you the idea of, well, you know, maybe I should set up a project with CERN. If you wonder about how to collaborate with CERN, it is not very different than working with any other academic player or actually with any other institution, also companies, startups, big companies in the world. We have a number of companies, we have a number of technologies that are ready to be licensed. Not a big difference to licensing a technology from anybody else. But then we also have many technologies which are available under open source licenses, simply because our CERN, we have a very strong commitment to making our know-how broadly accessible, and going through open source in many cases, not in all cases, but in many cases, is a very good approach for that. Beyond that, our scientists, our engineers are of course happy to provide consultancy to solve very tricky problems. Some cases we do contract research. What's important in these areas is that CERN's mission is not to be in concurrence with industry, academia in the member states and the associate member states. But in some cases, problems are so specific that maybe CERN might be the only place, or at least the only place available to provide additional insights and to support certain developments. And then finally, what's really the most interesting form of collaboration for us, that's co-development, collaborative R&D, where we team up with an external partner, an industrial partner, to solve an unmet need. The industrial partner has an unmet need, we have an unmet need, and we realize that the solutions are very similar. So we might just as well team up, develop solutions that then find different applications at CERN for particle physics with the industrial partner for whatever unmet need the industrial partner actually wants to tackle. Now, if that got you interested in what knowledge transfer does in general, you're welcome to, for those of you who still work with newsletters, to subscribe to our newsletter. And for those of you on LinkedIn, to subscribe to our LinkedIn channel. We have a very active LinkedIn channel. It's called CERN Innovation Partnerships. And the idea there is to provide you regular updates several times per week about knowledge transfer. It's not talking about what we do as a team. It's talking about what our scientists and engineers do in societal applications. And for those of you who were not in the talk at the beginning when I started, we will be with a booth at the European Quantum Technology Conference in Hanover. You will see this publicity at least one or two more times in that in my presentation today. Now that brings us actually to the topic of quantum technologies and the CERN Quantum Technology Initiative. So you might wonder why CERN is interested in quantum technologies, knowing that we're not a quantum physics institute, we're a particle physics institute. Well, it's quite simple. There's a dual question to be answered. There's one question to be answered of how can quantum technologies, future quantum technologies, actually contribute to CERN's scientific mission? Think simply about, as a very simple example, about using a quantum computer to do data analysis. There is an importance of understanding what quantum technologies are today. There is a bit of trying to look into the future about how they might actually develop and trying to understand how we might make them work for what we do today, but also in 5 years, 10 years. And there's the other question, which is more the Katie question, about how can CERN's development actually contribute to the quantum revolution? And in the end, what had happened is that there were many teams at CERN looking into quantum technologies already a couple of years ago. And at some point in 2018, CERN Open Lab, so that's part of the IT department, kicked off a more general discussion about how we could actually create a more focused initiative at CERN to coordinate our efforts and ensure that we make research in quantum technologies visible at the level of the organization. So that led to the creation of the first phase of the CERN Quantum Technology Initiative. It started in January 2021 for 3 years. It led to the development of a roadmap. Now, just a word on that roadmap. I think I have a link later in my presentation. It is a relatively short and very well written roadmap document explaining why quantum technologies actually matter to CERN. So it makes for a very good read if you want to learn more about the philosophy behind the QTI. That was published in 2021. It was a 3-year project, so we already understand that we're coming to the end of the 3rd year now. As part of CERN's efforts in quantum technologies, CERN was part of launching the concept of the OQI, that's the Open Quantum Institute, together with GESDA. So GESDA is a Geneva-based, I think it is a foundation. Don't quote me on that. I think it is a foundation that is dedicated to the interface between science and diplomacy. And the idea of an OQI would be to understand how to make the benefits of quantum more accessible for broader society, also with a view outside of typically Europe and the US. We organized a very successful conference in November 2022. Of course, with the QTI, we also had a number of dedicated research projects, and all of that actually sets us up to get ready for a much bigger initiative, which will be the QTI phase 2, starting in January 2024. So now it's September 2023. Now that QTI phase 1 had four main objectives. The first one was, of course, to investigate the potential impact that quantum technologies could have on CERN, and in general, CERN's physics programs. So this is really not just a CERN activity. It is an activity where we want to also build a community and create bridges between the particle physics and the quantum physics communities. That's basically pillar number 3, where we want to initiate co-development projects, understand, again, where knowledge and technologies of CERN can actually make an impact on the development of quantum technologies, where we can tackle questions together, and in general also integrate CERN into the national and international initiatives and programs that might actually exist. So what we did was to design strategy and roadmap, that's a document, explaining technical, collaboration, education activities, but also implement a research program, which was still very low level. So here we're really talking about roughly 10 PhD positions, just venturing a little bit under the guidance of senior researchers into the 4 classical areas of quantum technologies. Quantum computing, so the question of using quantum algorithms for particle data simulation, reconstruction, classification. There's also obviously the idea of quantum using quantum effects in the field of sensing. How could we design future high energy physics detectors, particle physics detectors based on quantum effects? There's an entire discussion about making CERN, CERN being a trusted and neutral partner, making CERN a central node in the future quantum networks, also understanding how could we play a role there. And of course, not to be forgotten, the whole thing needs to be supported by work of our theory department in the areas of quantum field theory, lattice QCD. Beyond that investigation, a need for community development, hence the organization of a dedicated conference. We had more than 250 attendees from both academia and industry, but also the creation of a task force to investigate how quantum computing can support high energy physics. This QC4HAB working group published a summary paper a couple of months ago. I think the final version was published over the summer. I can only invite you to actually take a look at what this international team, at the findings of that international team, telling us in which direction we should actually develop over the coming years. Talking about development, you of course need to take into account that we need to train and educate the future generation, well, the current generation of scientists, but also the future generation of scientists. One of the initiatives was an extremely welcome series of lectures by Professor Elias Combaro, an introduction to quantum computing. It turns out that this was originally held as an online seminar. You see the dates. This was at the end of 2020, so it was in the middle of when many of us were still in confinement. What is interesting is that this was recorded, and we still regularly see new people taking that course, watching the lectures, and getting their introduction to quantum computing thanks to the lecture by Elias Combaro that took place almost 3 years ago. And that is now, of course, complemented by lectures and seminars that take place at CERN with field experts, with early career researchers explaining their research. We offer training courses and workshops with industries. It's very important to keep that link with the outside world, with the CERN and the non-academia world. And then, of course, also setting up a journal club, having so-called inverted lectures where early career researchers present their things. You have 2 links on that slide. So the quantum.cern, by the way, is the official website of the Quantum Technology Initiative. And the sub-pages that I'm showing you here, one leads you to the lectures by Professor Combaro, and the other one leads you to recordings of online lectures. Now, coming a bit more to the technologies, you probably already got the hints that many of the extreme requirements faced by quantum technologies, for those of you active in that area, you certainly know that people are talking about superconductors, ultra-high vacuum, very precise timing requirements to synchronize nodes in a quantum network. data analysis, algorithm development, that many of these extreme requirements are actually very close to the ones that you also find in high energy physics that we find at CERN in our machines. Hence, at CERN, what often happens is that we need to develop our own technologies because you don't find them in industry. We need to develop technologies to cover needs that are not yet addressed by industry. Hence, there's really an interest in co-developing with industry. Now, I will not go through all the examples that we could come up with. I mean, that would be a lecture series over half a year, I suppose. However, there's just a very few specific examples that I wanted to highlight to give you an idea of how technologies that were designed for something completely different might be used in quantum technologies, but also to give you an idea that clearly we need to interact with you. We need to interact with the experts in quantum technology to understand how our technologies could be used. So White Rabbit is an open source technology that was developed at CERN to synchronize in a very simplified way, to synchronize electronics along CERN's machine network, along, for example, the accelerators with picosecond precision. There was no technology available that would provide you picosecond synchronization of distributed electronics. Now, it turns out that this development has been around for 10 to 15 years, I think, providing synchronization. It has had sufficient success to actually make it into an IEEE standard. But we also realized that it is used outside of CERN. So it is an open source technology. There are now there's commercial White Rabbit hardware available from several vendors. And to tell you just one example is that it's typically used by the German stock exchange, the Deutsche Börse, on their main site in Frankfurt to synchronize buy and sales orders in high frequency trading. So for them, it's extremely important to know who bought and sold things first, hence the need for picosecond precise synchronization. I can tell you this is not an application that anybody had in mind when White Rabbit was originally created to synchronize our electronics. Nice thing about White Rabbit is that we also start to see in some preliminary research, typically by the NIST in the US, that White Rabbit could be used to synchronize nodes in a quantum network. I put a link to I think this is an initial publication that NIST recently made showing that you could actually use White Rabbit for network node synchronization. It could also be used to synchronize global navigation systems. So there we're actually exiting the area of quantum applications. But clearly, we're now seeing a real interest by the quantum communication community in using this technology, which is not at all a quantum technology in itself, but which is an enabling technology. And we are facilitating that by setting up a dedicated collaboration, which will be a membership-based community that brings stakeholders together, academia, institutes, vendors, users, to facilitate the uptake of the technology, but also to set up R&D projects to demonstrate its applicability in new domains. And White Rabbit is going to be part of, or is expected to be part, I have to say this correctly, is expected to be part of Quantum Technology Initiative phase 2. And then should one of you actually be active in that area, we're also going to provide support and training and calibration and performance tests for a dedicated White Rabbit hardware. Now that is about synchronizing things, but you might also have to detect signals with picosecond precision. So CERN developed a dedicated time digital converter, the thing's called the TDC, the picosecond time to digital converter. That's a chip that was originally developed for CERN's high energy physics experiments, where you might have to precisely measure the arrival time of a particle in your detector. You want to do picosecond precise time tagging for your event reconstruction. Now, it turns out that if you do, again, quantum networking, quantum communications, you might actually have to provide picosecond precise time tagging of photons to make your system work. A completely different topic, again, talking about technologies, is that at CERN, our electronics often have to deal with high radiation environments. I'm just providing a citation here, telling you that obviously the high luminosity LHC will require large bandwidth and radiation tolerant data links. I mean, you could also already talk to people that installed the current experiment. Here we're looking at the Atlas. That's the still empty Atlas detector before the innards were installed. Also, the parts which are close to the intersection point need to be radiation hard, which means CERN has know-how in designing radiation hard electronics, but also in testing electronics for radiation hardness. We have been doing this for CubeSats. Now, what you see here is a picture of the Celesta satellite. That itself is not directly related to quantum, but what I want to the point that I would like to make is that CERN might support development of radiation hard components for space quantum communications. And just one final example, again, so here we're now talking about radio frequency cavities. At CERN, we need to design radio frequency cavities, in general, superconducting RF cavities by now that are used to accelerate particles. And what you see here is an image of one of our linear accelerators, which means that we developed quite an extensive and in some cases unique expertise in making superconducting coatings, so coatings and surface science. And it turns out that if you design a quantum computer, which is based on certain categories of bosonic, of certain categories of qubits, well, then putting them into an RF cavity with superconducting coated RF cavity actually increases the lifetime, which allows you to do more powerful computation. And again, it looks like there are some opportunities for co-development. So we are actually open to co-development with companies to realize this potential based on CERN's know-how. And that brings us to this forward-looking part, which is the Quantum Technology Initiative Phase 2, which is going to start at the beginning of 2024 and where we currently have a vision that we hope to implement. And that vision is to really develop a center of excellence in quantum technologies at CERN, where we are going to capitalize on the knowledge and the technologies that are unique to CERN and that are being developed at CERN as part of our mainstream scientific program. So the idea here, again, is that we want, first of all, to make quantum work for us, to support our mission, and to develop whatever is required to be able to move forward, to look into the future. What that entails, obviously, is integrating CERN, continuing that integration of CERN into the major infrastructure technological initiatives, establishing co-development activities. We're looking really at long-term public-private partnerships. We are not saying here that we have the solution to unmet needs in quantum technologies. What we're interested in is precisely developing solutions to common unmet needs, and clearly engaging with initiatives to transfer the knowledge, but also create capacity and skills in the broader community. And that would actually go through 4 dedicated pillars. I'm going to start with this one here. So there's real interest in understanding how to make quantum computing work for us. That requires, of course, thinking about, well, the hardware behind it. There is an idea of looking into distributed hybrid quantum computing and also algorithms that would actually run on that platform. There are ideas of developing specific technologies. I'll go into the details actually in the next slide, of developing specific technologies where we see that there's still a gap to be filled. The idea of looking in how to make quantum communications work for us, and obviously establishing collaboration. So basically, there are quite concrete ideas of what we could do, and what we are now doing is actually shaping the details of how this could be made in the best way to benefit the high energy physics community, the particle physics community, and quantum technologies. On the algorithmic side, the idea here is a bit of a political idea, is to ensure that our requirements, the requirements of the particle physics community, are taken into account as quantum computers and algorithms are developed. So there's a bit of a lobbying here to make sure that whatever will be on the market would actually work for us. That at the same time means understanding the performance of the infrastructure that is currently available, that would soon be available in realistic setups, and actually start using it. And by using it, that's how you actually learn how to optimize your algorithms for data processing. And again, there's this focus on distributed hybrid computing. So it's really the idea of how can we make the best out of different computing platforms, quantum and non-quantum computing, of different quantum computing approaches, and combine these. And there's a strong interest in quantum machine learning. Just a side note, I don't think I have this in my slides. CERN is going to host the Quantum Technologies in Machine Learning conference in November. If anybody's interested, I'll be happy to send the link separately. So that this conference is going to be hosted at CERN, in November, as I just mentioned. And as CERN, we can provide use cases for quantum algorithms. I mean, we have petabytes of data, some of the data that has already been analyzed using classical computing, using analytic approaches, using machine learning approaches, and one way of verifying whether your quantum algorithms actually work is to take the same data and then, in a sense, comparing it with what was done with other approaches. And again, that clearly calls for co-development partnerships, because this requires a close interaction with those of you that make the hardware and the interfaces behind it. Now, we need to develop competences linked to some concrete technologies, most of them related to particle physics. I have high energy physics written in most of my slides, but we're actually talking about particle physics in the broader sense, also at lower energies. For questions like dark matter search, axion search, gravitational wave detection, there's a whole list of that. Basically, the physics that the big physics questions that we would like to tackle next. And that means we are interested in certain technologies. The ones that were highlighted to me are hydrogen-like Rydberg atoms. There is the use of superconducting RF cavities, in particular for axion search, the further development of transition edge sensors. So a number of technologies that we think would actually work for particle physics, but that can also have other applications, quantum computing, sensing. So again, a real interest in co-development. The knowledge transfer example that I gave you at the beginning, well, no, not enough. The example of successful transfer of CERN technology to society that I had at the beginning was the one of the invention of the web. And it turns out that over the 90s, CERN became one of the fundamental nodes of the internet infrastructure, at least on a regional level. And we think that through CERN's geographical position, through CERN's know-how in communications and networks, we could and should also be part of the emerging quantum communications and network infrastructure in Europe. First, because we can offer CERN as a trusted partner, but also because if you want to create a distributed quantum computing platform, you also need to have the networking capability and the infrastructure that allows you to actually create this distributed structure. So there is this interest in integrating CERN into this emerging infrastructure in Europe, and at the same time to also again contribute CERN technology and expertise. Think about White Rabbit for time synchronization, to actually implement that networking infrastructure. So we are again talking about co-development and working with, well, academia and industry. And that brings me to the last slide of this presentation, which is that we have a dedicated pillar for exploring, developing, and establishing co-innovation and co-development partnerships. We're talking about companies, institutes, and other entities. We'll be more than happy to continue this discussion, to have a brainstorming that can take place online. That can take place on site at CERN. It can take place online. We'll be happy to answer if you reach out to us either directly to the email address down there, kt.quantum@cern.ch. That's how you reach my colleague Amanda Diaz and me. I'm certain also through CERN alumni. And just in case, if you happen to be in Hanover next month, we'll be there with a booth at EQTC and more than happy to meet you. And that's it.
Nice, thank you. Thank you, Benjamin. I'm sure everybody enjoyed Benjamin's talk, and I would also kindly ask Rachel to say a few words and to close the event. Thanks again, Benjamin, and everyone else. Actually, also your answers were really useful, and also questions. So Rachel, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope that everybody enjoyed that. And our next and final news from the lab with our KT colleagues will focus on entrepreneurship. And so we'll be publishing the date for that shortly. So keep an eye out on alumni.cern. Now, I'd just like to finish by saying a very, very big thank you to Enna and Benjamin, and also to all of you for joining us today.